so. Oh, there we go. Thank you everyone for joining us at lunchtime. What we're going to do, we're going to do some 1-minute intros, and you will notice that we will do a bit of a one-liner in terms of accessibility for the visually impaired, so don't be alarmed. And again, thank you for joining us. Come on in, come on in. So hi, I'm Stephanie Nattu. My pronouns are she and her. I'm in my early 40s and I'm of mixed ethnicity. My background is half Chinese Malaysian and half Nepalese. I have long black hair and I'm wearing a fluoro green suit, and I thought my shorts were fitting for the beach. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. 16 of those years have been agency side before moving to CreativeBrief, where I'm at today as Associate Board Director and Business Director. And at CreativeBrief, we are always championing progressive brands and agencies, and we've always written about the topic of gender equality. Throughout my career, I still have not seen enough women represented at the top, let alone women who look like me. So this is why I am here today. I'm going to pass the mic to Clemmie.
I'm just convinced whether my mic is working. Is it working? Oh, great. Thank you. Hello, I'm Clemmie. I am wearing, what am I wearing? A black maxi dress and some fisherman's sandals, which again I hope is beachy. And I'm lucky I live down the road in Broadstairs, so it's fantastic for me that the industry came here for the last couple of days. My story is that I've got 3 kids, and I think that's quite important for the context of this. My background is as an agency creative director, which I did all the way up until the point of having 2 kids. And I always thought I was going to carry on for the rest of my career doing that until I wasn't. Firstly, I couldn't make it work for me in the way that I wanted, so I found myself going to Meta for a year and had a quite transformative experience in terms of the way technology could enable me to work how I wanted. And second of all, I started a side hustle as a content creator that turned into more than a side hustle. I think it's fair to say I spent the last 6 years kind of being an influencer, which makes me cringe, but I've got a blog and a podcast and have got to work with all the brands I could ever have dreamed of in that context. But in the time that I've got booked on this, and between now and then, I've actually found myself wandering back into the industry, which is a surprise to me. But yeah, I'm back after leaving in 2016. I'm back in an agency for the first time.
Thank you, Clemmie. Ipek?
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Ipek. I am a strategist at McCann, London. Originally born and bred in Turkey, then went to uni to the United States. Started my career in the Madison Avenue, McCann, New York, and been in the industry for 5 years, so technically still a bit of a baby, but so happy to be here, and yeah, just be amongst you and with some awesome women from the industry.
Thank you. Sue?
Hello, my name's Sue Higgs. I've been working in this industry for 34 years, so you can probably do some maths. I'm probably the oldest one on this panel. I have got short blondish hair, too blonde at the moment for my liking, but that will change. I'm wearing a denim dress, and I have some white trainers on because I never wear grown-up shoes. I've still not managed to be able to do that. I'm a ECD at Dentsu Creative, and we're very proud to sponsor this event, which is very important to all of us. Like I said, 34 years, man and boy, in this industry. I started at Lohad Spink before even the internet was invented. So I've seen some change in my time. I've worked at most of the big agencies, culminating in Dentsu Creative now. I also have 3 children. I'm a single mother. I brought them up on my own for the last 15 years. And they seem to be not in prison yet, so that seems to be okay. I'm very passionate about this because, weirdly, this is going to sound strange, I didn't even know I was a woman until I entered this industry. They told me, and they kind of marked me down for that, but I didn't even know that was a thing. So I've spent a lot of time trying to not make it a thing and make it accessible and inclusive for everybody to be their best creative selves. I'm also very passionate about bullying. I've written a lot about anti-bullying and bad behaviours, and like I say, to culminate in a better place for everybody to work in and create and do their best work. So that's me.
Thank you. So, round of applause. Yes, well deserved. So, to get us started, just a little bit of context. And essentially, there is a creative crisis of confidence in the creative industries that really is in danger of wrecking women's creative careers. And senior leaders, female leaders, have even cited the need to reconnect and recharge with their families. So we have to do more to change our working expectations. Even the Evening Standard's fashion pages hailed the frazzled English woman as a latest trend. And the latest Deloitte Women at Work reports cited that almost half of women, 46% of women, feel burnt out. Can I just get a raise of hands from the audience to understand if you have ever felt burnt out or overwhelmed at work? Thank you for putting your hands up. And on that note, for some reason, our industry has developed this sort of collective numbness to this crisis. But there is hope. And since the pandemic, women have been choosing change. And this is what we are here to talk about today. So Clemmie, the first question's for you, I think. The statistics of women exiting the creative industries is paralyzing. It's almost too big of a problem to solve. So what are the personal and professional and industry-wide level changes that we can make to recognize and respond to the talent crisis?
For me, I think it comes down to values and what is valued. I think when I was last in the industry, it was very much valuing work hard, play hard. It was innovation, being cool, having your fingers on the pulse, which for me became increasingly at odds with what I was able to offer as a parent. Whereas you should be valuing experience and wisdom and intuition, which are much more like soft and quite classically feminine things. And actually, yes, I might not be able to come to the pub for the work drinks, but maybe I can offer you something else because I can speak on behalf of a family. And actually, so many brands are trying to market to families. So yeah, I think really it's about shifting what the industry values are, and somewhere in amongst that, making everybody feel valued. I don't think I was told often enough that I was of value, and maybe you shouldn't need that, and maybe that, yeah, sounds like, but you do, especially if you're in a circumstance of confidence crisis, which I don't see anyone becoming a parent and not having to recalibrate themselves. So yeah, changing your values and in a very straightforward way, letting people know they're valued.
Thank you, Clemmie. And Ipek, over to you on this one, because we spoke about potential, which I think was a lovely point that we've discussed before.
Yeah, definitely. I think like one of the kind of questions that kind of like jolted me out and think about like the long term was, just maybe I'll just ask the question to the room, like raise your hand if you know your potential. Again, it's like less than half of this room, right? And then when that question was asked to me, I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know. But it's so important to know your potential and to know your kind of like long-term goal. And I think in the industry, we're very short-sighted. The way we set our KPIs, the way we thrown into projects, and the way we just try to kind of like survive the workload in the day, we kind of lose sight of that like bigger purpose that we work into. And when you look at the data, people who work for a greater purpose, and if that purpose is aligned with the organizations and the organizations kind of cultivate that, they tend to stay. And obviously, with a lot of women kind of leaving the industry at multiple different levels, we're kind of failing at this. And I think in order to kind of prevent that, I totally agree that like we need to change the values. But when I look at the different levels of like the career path, like I'm at the beginning, you're kind of like, you're way in ahead. No, I mean, it's just like every woman's experience and barriers is so different. So we need to do a bit of like consumer journey analysis almost that we do for our clients so obsessively. It's like, ooh, like how do we target them? What's their barriers? Like, let's flip that narrative back to the employees and women and see that how can we feel the potentials of women so if they feel valued, so they feel like we feel like we're reaching towards our potentials and we feel supported and empowered to do so.
Love that. And Sue, just bringing us back to tangible changes that we can make personally, professionally, industry-wide level. What's your view on that?
2 men are leaving, they don't want to know about it.
Bye.
They will miss out.
They're going to, well, that's and I think the problem is, it's on all of us to change it. It's not just on women to change this. You know, it can't just be on us, because we're all in this together. We're all humans trying to do the best thing. And it is down to values, and it is down to people, and we are nothing without being human and bringing our human experience to do that. There's a load of things we can do. I think as a leader, we have to realise that you work for us as much as we work for you. It has to be a two-way conversation. It's not a master-servant thing. How can I create the best working environment for you to do your best work? I remember very clearly when I worked at quite a brutal place, and I became a single mother. I had 3 children under 7, and I had quite a, let's say, understanding boss. But I used to say to him, focus on my work. Don't focus on what I do. If my work goes wrong, have a go at me. If not, you have to leave me be. You have to let people do it in their own way, whatever that may be. I'm really proud that a member of my department, a man, has written on the bottom of his email, I stop work at 5 because I'm on child duties, and then I might pick up some emails at 7. We need to see more of that behaviour. We need to see more ways in which men are showing up to support, because it's not just on women. The childcare, the mental load is not just on women. We have to be in all this together in order to be able to create the circumstances for us all to thrive. And it's to listen. If you see someone struggling, talk. And also sometimes I may not know, and hopefully, well, my department don't go against me, will tell you that I'm always here with an ear, and I will do whatever I can to create a circumstance where you can do your best work, because if you're not happy, it's going to show in your work. And I think if we can focus on that and create those sorts of environments and have a positive, a collaborative conversation, then things will get better.
So hopefully some really useful answers and takeaways. I have to move on to the second question, which is really about, is there a creative crisis of confidence in the creative industry? One which sort of crosses generations, but also, should we be doing more to identify those women on the edges of leaving? Ipek.
Yeah, definitely. So I think my answer is there is a confidence crisis, and it's threefold, I think. So one is the confidence crisis within ourselves, because I feel like a lot of women kind of suffer from that imposter syndrome, and a part of that is because you feel like you're undervalued, and you kind of like strive for that acceptance in the agency. And like one kind of feedback that I got from a manager was like, oh, you're an insecure overachiever. And I was like, I don't know how to take that. And I was very junior, so I was like, when I look back at it, I see how problematic that was. Because my way of being accepted in an agency was, okay, I'm like an outsider from the culture, I'm just a junior, so I need to like prove my worth by kind of like overworking. So I would raise my hand to everything, and like I was kind of like sacrificing a lot personally. But when I look back and realize, it's just so problematic, because you're putting so much in just to be accepted. And then the other thing that was told to me was, in order to progress, you need to play the agency game. And I was like, and that's like basically putting work into your craft, but also kind of developing your personal relationships, like going to the pub, or joining all of these like more like white British male activities. And I'm like, I don't have a clue what you're saying, or I don't have a clue about this like ad that you're referencing like from 30 years ago. I wasn't even speaking English then. So again, it's just, we need to change that agency game to kind of like close that confidence gap. So we kind of like from right off the bat feel like we're accepted, and we're kind of empowered to like do the work, as opposed to feeling like, oh, like, why am I here? Do I deserve this? Am I worth it? It's just, I don't know. It's tough sometimes.
Such interesting insight. And sorry, I was going to ask Clemmie, you obviously were in the industry, you left, and then you've come back. Like, what's your take on it? And again, should we be doing more to identify women on the edges of leaving?
It's so funny, because this is a bit like therapy, I'm only just coming back, and I thought I was the only one feeling the way I was. You know, I just thought it was my problem, something that I had to go and solve. And now I'm hearing that there are loads of other women. I think there's such an important part in peer-to-peer support, and you know, this is a problem that carries on because there are very few women to look up to at the top. Or even talk to. You know, not every department has a Sue who you could always go to with an ear. So I definitely internalized it all. Yeah. And for me, it was definitely a case of, is the expression death by 1,000 paper cuts? There was no one thing. There was no one moment when I decided to leave. It was that meeting going in at 7 p.m. when I needed to be putting my kids to bed. It was that agency, the creative department that was a like craft beer pub when I was still breastfeeding, so I couldn't do that. And bit by bit, you feel more and more out of place. So when we think about actionable things, I don't think there's a big turning over. There's a looking at all the small behaviours that chip away.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's the small things, isn't it? It's sometimes it's not going to be one big thing that changes things, but it's really important, like you were saying about, you have to find your tribe, you have to find your people, because you're not alone ever. For every, I know we're not talking about bullying, but when I did, I found a whole community of people that felt the same. And there's something that I've just joined with some female creative directors. They all feel the same. And I think it's knowing and feeling safe enough to be able to air it, because if you feel it, you know there's someone else feeling it. And together we will be stronger. Some men feel it too. You know, it's a really patriarchal business we work in. And I think sometimes we've got so much better with our vocabulary that we think that the problem's gone away, but it hasn't. I do really try as well. I think it's really important to make sure everyone's heard. So especially nowadays where not all of our business is in real life, to make sure that the sort of maybe the younger women, younger people are heard, say, what do you think? Can you speak first? I'd like to hear from you. So the same voices don't get heard all the time. So hopefully people do feel a bit more valued. And I think it's if we can collect and start kind of be more intuitive, because the alpha way of leadership isn't working. It's not even working for the alpha leads. Yep. And I think some of the values that Clemmie was talking about empathy and about understanding, should not be mistaken as weaknesses, because they're strengths, and that's the best way to get people to a safe, psychological safe place where they can speak up.
And be their authentic, true selves, isn't it? Because I think, from the pandemic, there's been lots of industry articles, lots of industry conversation around empathetic leadership, which apparently is like one of the number one qualities to lead with. But Sue, you mentioned it's on all of us, including men, and finding your tribes, which kind of leads nicely to what is the role of men here, because we always still talk about women dropping out. And the latest All-In census stated that 55% of women who took parental leave felt that it had a negative impact on their career. So Clemmie, what's your initial thought on that?
There's a couple of bits to that question. Do I think that taking maternity leave twice over impacted my career? 100%. And it's only the further I get away from those experiences that I realise how big an impact it had. And then this is the classic tricky thing about parenting. I also regret going back to work so quickly, because I regret that. I wish I'd stayed at home. But actually, the positive spin on it is I do think that those maternity leaves are what added up to me leaving, both for the negative reasons, but because I had a chance to stop and to step out of the industry and to remember the bigger picture of life and the world. And I think therein lies a really big shift. I think the uptake on men taking shared parental leave is still staggeringly low. My husband did it with our third child, and for the first time, he understood what it was to be left out of meetings just before he was going, and not knowing what conversations were happening just before he was going on shared parental leave. And then he's gone on to be a proper co-parent. So I think for those reasons, those moments where men are properly sitting in classic female roles are the ones that change things.
And I think on that paternity leave, on the maternity leave thing, if I'd had one Peter and went, do you have a nice holiday? Literally. And I think the more people that realise it's not a holiday, we're actually, it was very different when I had my children, and it definitely did impede me. But the thing I would say, it's a price I would pay, because we can't all run, if we want to play a long game, if we want to stay, I think, you know, and progress through the industry, you can't sprint the whole time of your life, unfortunately, and sometimes you have to walk it. And loads of men went ahead of me, but that doesn't mean I can't run and catch up. And I think it's sometimes you have to allow yourself and feel that confidence. You know, you do have, well, I'm speaking for myself, we don't seem to have the ego bred into us like a man would. And so to cultivate a little bit of ego for yourself to go, I've got this, and allow yourself to walk a little bit and know that you've got it in you to catch up, can be really useful to know, and not kind of shame yourself into thinking that you're some kind of failure for doing one of the most valuable jobs there is on this planet to do, to bring up a child.
And so that rings true with something we spoke about as well before, in terms of, you know, you really hate the notion of the woman who has it all.
Oh my God. Literally, whoever said, who the hell are they, and what are they talking about, and what is it all, and how dare you say it? Does ever say that to a man? You have what you need, and you take what you need. There's no such thing as having it all. We're all messy, chaotic people. We take what we need at that time. This notion of it all is bullshit. And I think we shouldn't even give it any airtime, because it's just another stick to beat women into not being like, oh, what do you mean? You've not got a perfect child and you're not dressed properly, and what, you're not working, have you got dinner? Bullshit. You just take what you need. Just don't even think about that awful, awful phrase which has just been used as a stick to chastise women with.
And if we turn that around, you know, Ipek, what do you think is the role of men to support us?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, I'm at a bit of an earlier stage in my life where, you know, that things will come later on for me, I guess. But for me, I think the reason that I kind of am sitting here right now working in this country, obviously it's me, first of all, but there were a lot of men who actually opened the door for me, or really supported my progression by telling me, you know, how good I was doing, or giving me feedback. And I think the important role of men here is that just understanding your role, and also understand your impact, because you can change careers. For example, it was a managing director of my company when I was feeling a bit hesitant to bring in my culture and my whole self to the workplace. I did this stand-up course, and the whole set was about the Turkish experience and the airports and the passport queues. And I was like, oh my God, everyone's gonna hate it. They're not gonna get it. And then the MD after that set came to me and said you need to bring more of that to work. That is great. And I was like, okay, that was small, but it was a huge moment for me where I was like, okay, actually, I should be bringing my own self and my own style to work. And that kind of flipped a massive switch for me for confidence. And I kind of stopped looking into other people, or more senior men, and trying to assimilate to how they do things. But I was like, okay, screw that. I'm just gonna do my own thing. And you know what? That's what I bring to the table. But again, it's just small actions that can change a whole big thing. So the men in the room, first of all, great that you're here, but also think about in your day-to-day, the feedback you give, or the doors you open for women. It's so important.
Thank you, Ipek. Go on.
I was going to say, sorry, don't get me started. I think also, just to add to that, I think it's also, and maybe it's because I got a bit further down the road, call people out. The amount of men that have spoken over me, and they don't even realise they're doing it. The amount of men who have not listened to what I've said, then another man says it, and I have to say, excuse me, I think you'll find that's what I said before. Don't be ashamed to call that out, because sometimes it's actually a learning for them too. Oh God, did I do that? Yes, you did. And actually own your own space, and just because they know they've done it, because we have to educate as much as we go and call out behaviours that aren't okay. And sometimes it's not just men, it's the patriarchal system that enforces that, and they've sort of believed that's the way they have to be, it has to be this. But to create a space where everybody can speak is the thing to do, but call it out if they don't.
And it's that safe zone that you spoke about before, isn't it, where everyone can then be their authentic selves. I have to move us on to the last question before we sort of open it up for some questions from you all. And the last one to all of you really is, you know, on a personal level, how can you run your own race as a creative to basically maintain and have more control of your time and therefore greater personal agency? Ipek?
Yeah, I think like two things that I want to say here. One is my personal take is, and as I feel more confident, like be more reckless. Like be that, like let's just fuck some shit up. So excuse my French, but literally I think that's the spirit that we should have. Because we're in a creative industry and we need to kind of like take ownership and be a bit more like reckless as opposed to kind of like feeling like, oh, am I doing this right? Or am I like fitting in all right? Just like create your own race and just like run it like hell, you know, and just like, you know, screw what everyone says, like we're creatives. But also I think I don't see it as like an individual race. We're running it as a collective. So take care of other women's race, because I think it's so valuable for you to like speak up on behalf of a colleague, and it's like it creates bigger impact. So when you do it for someone, they do it for another person. So we kind of like change that culture. So I think that's my two things.
Love that, thank you. Clemmie?
This is difficult because I went away and completely started running my own race. And I don't know how, as I'm going back in, I kind of feel annoyed because it took for me to leave and carve out a whole second career for me to be more interesting. And I feel like, again, no disrespect to the men in the room, I feel like that reminds me of every time that you split up with a boyfriend and you went and got a new guy, they're suddenly interested again. And it feels like that as a familiar thing. That aside, I think as I'm trying to remember what it's like to be in an office again, the imposter syndrome is loud and real, which has surprised me because I've been my own boss. But I've really been restricting myself to reframe that. Imposter syndrome is actually because I want to do my job really well, and I don't need to prove it to anyone. I just want to be the best version of the creative I can be. So every time I've got wound down that I'm not good enough, am I up to the job? It's like, no, what you're feeling is that you need to push yourself and not to do it for anybody else.
Great. Sue, last words.
Oh, God. As the top of a very a multi-millionaire agency owner said to me, nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone's making it up. Yeah. So if they're making it up, you're making it up. So guess what? Make up what you need. Because this is not something that we're not lawyers, we're not following a thing. We can decide how we want to do it. And I think, say no sometimes and see what happens. And because I mentor a woman, and I said, well, I want you to say no twice this week. And she went, I can't do that. And I said, you can. And guess what? It was brilliant for her. Own your own self, because sometimes I think we have to get out of our own way because we don't realise how brilliant we are, because there's no one else. I don't want to turn this into like a cheesy kind of Hallmark card thing, but you have to have look at the evidence sometimes of what you do. Don't always beat yourself with what you're not, because you're going to have a bad day, you're going to have a good day. The other thing I would really say to yourself is understand how important rest is to creativity. If you can't do it, rest. Because your brain does get fried. And if you need to take a day, you need to take an afternoon, take it, because you will be a better human being and creative for it, because we just throw ourselves it all the time. And I try and say to people, if you need to rest, it's the most creative act and you can do for yourself, because then you can recharge and bring yourself back to a space where you're not going to turn on yourself. Because what we say to ourselves, as Emma Thompson said, our shit FM in our heads is worse than anybody ever thinks about us. So we need to sort of find a space where we can turn that shit FM off, not on, off, and rest. Because, that's the only place we can sort of bring our whole self, I think.
Thank you, Sue. I'm going to remember Shit FM for sure for the rest of the afternoon.
Emma Thompson's, I can't. Sorry. Me and Emma.
Thank you, all three of you, for some, I hope, some like really useful insights for the audience. And I think we're just going to open it up. So there's a mic going around. Say your name, the question, and if you're directing it to someone in particular.
Hi, I'm Elena, Broadstairs resident with Clemmie. Woo woo. This has been such a great panel. I've been really looking forward to this all week, so thank you all. I wanted to ask all of you about power. It feels like it's probably something that would be great to get your thoughts on, related to the power imbalances that we know contributed to the Me Too allegations. They also contribute to the gender pay gap. They also contribute to the dominance of white feminism, right? There's so many different layers to how power continues to hold women back, or the imbalance of power. And so I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, as an industry, what could we be doing besides women's empowerment conferences, which many of us go to, but kind of what could we be doing in the businesses that we work in to try to shift some of those power imbalances for the better?
Jump in, go Clemmie.
Something that I picked up at Meta was the idea of focusing on the quietest person in the room. And I'm actually, again, definitely seeing that with remote working. It's so easy to go into meeting after meeting and hardly being seen or heard. And it's terrible, the premise that the loudest, most extrovert person should be the person who dominates any situation, especially in the creative industries where people have these amazing but possibly quiet minds. So it's a very simple thing, but yeah, listen, look for the person not speaking and ask them what they want to say.
I also think, just to add, we have to ensure that women are represented at the top, that they are at senior leadership, that they are at a management level, so that the power then is balanced or then changes. I think certain disciplines, particularly, agencies, are very more so women. Let's talk about PR agencies, etc. But it's still not ever present in sort of creative industries, and I still think there is just so much more work to be done. But we're half the population, so surely, come on.
Yeah, I agree. I think also because power is a weird thing, isn't it? Because it's not actually a thing, it's what we think it is. And it's only if we buy into it. And if you don't buy into it, then it kind of doesn't really stack up. So I think we have to, the more we come together and talk and take it back and just do something else that doesn't play into that narrative, then the more the kind of power drains away. I think that finding your tribe and people who, you have to have a backer. You have to have your community around you, and that's the most important thing, because then you feel supported and you feel validated, and then you kind of galvanize your own kind of power, let's say, because you have a belief system that you all share. And the more that you can get that, the more then you instigate change. I think it's really brilliant. We've got lots of more vocabulary nowadays around things, but I think it's just how we can find actions as well to back the vocabulary, and just keep calling things out. Sometimes you don't realize just how much change you can take and power you can take back just by calling something out. Just by making yourself vulnerable. As leaders, I think we have to make ourselves vulnerable, because we're all imperfect, we're all flawed, and we've all had terrible things happen to us on the way. But we've learned, and I think we need to share those in order to be able to help others to not feel so alone and feel like they're powerless.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else for a question? I think at the front.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Gemma. I'm a copywriter at McCann with So I feel like companies at the moment are really encouraging female creatives and female creative teams to come into the industry. But I hardly ever see a full female creative team at the top. There's just hardly anyone there. And as I go in my career, I'm now starting to think, maybe I need to plan when I have my child, so it's not before a big promotion, because one of us will get promoted and one of us might not, because some point they're splitting up much more than two male creatives. So my question is, how do you navigate that as a partnership with your creative partner? What can companies do to empower two female creatives to get to the top together?
Clemmie or Sue, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, I was in an all-female team and we split up when I had kids. And I'm just trying to, as you're saying it, I'm wondering why that was. I'm going to pass to you, Sue.
I mean, yeah, I've weirdly, and I was thinking as you're saying, I've always worked with a man. So I think that's almost quite conscious, weirdly, because I had to go through that situation. And also, I think, a couple of things. One of my biggest bugbears is never call a female team girls, because it's patronising.
What was that, sorry?
Never call just an all-women team girls, because it's patronising. I'm really sort of vociferous against anyone ever saying that. I think all you can do is take it as a case by case. I think you'd hope, when I was working with a guy and when I had my baby, I got marked down, but it was a long, long time ago, and I think we need to learn from that. And I think it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, but I think it's on everybody to make sure it doesn't happen. I don't have a clear-cut answer, but I would like to think if someone came to me with that, I would work through to a solution with them to make sure that they felt valued, because you don't want to be berated for having a child, and that's never okay. So it's never something that's happened to me. I think saying about the female team, I think, and I've spoken a lot, we seem to lose women at that's the time we're very good at recruiting women into the industry, but we seem to lose them when they have children. We need to work more to make sure that we support that way. So maybe they come out and they do become female creative leaders, the other side as teams, but it does seem to drop out at that point. So we just need to work harder, and we need to keep talking, and we need to keep pushing, and you need to ask, and you need to make sure it doesn't happen, and we need to support that, because it's not okay that it doesn't.
I was just going to say, I really hope, McCann's a great agency, and I hope that you can have people to talk to there, even men as well at the top, as well as female creative directors there. I was just going to say, I think we have time for one more.
Thank you.
There's another at the front.
I am also called Clemmie. I'm the comms director at McCann London with Ipek. Thanks so much for all of your time. I just wanted to say, it really struck me at the beginning of this panel. Steph, you said, can everyone put their hand up if they felt burnout and lack of confidence? And we all raced to put our hands in the air. And then Ipek, you said, who knows their own potential? And basically no one put their hand in the air. And I kind of feel like we're all our own worst enemies. Like we have this collective sense that it's embarrassing to put our hands up if we think that we can have potential. I'm sure if we were all speaking one-on-one, we might feel more confident to say, oh, I can do this and I can do that. And I just wonder, what are your thoughts on how we can empower ourselves as individuals, but collectively, and just stop doing this thing where we're all just no, I can't do it because no one else says that they can do it. And then it just becomes this it's almost like the women as well are creating this continuous narrative.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go on.
I can, I guess, answer to that. I think one thing that has really helped me was mentorship and talking to other women, because whenever I spoke to mentors, they were can you just stop and realize how much you're doing? Do less, do less. Again, it's take that break. I think is so important. And even when I mentor some women who are younger at high school age, and this woman is doing everything. She got this apprenticeship at Imperial. She's at 5 clubs, all A's, and she's yeah, I don't know if I have the credentials to apply for that. And I just told her can you just stop and realize how fucking awesome you are? And I think we just need to kind of tell each other that and make us realize our potential and our greatness. And I guess between our friends, we kind of address it as channel that white male energy, because when women are applying for jobs, it's if you're fitting 8 of the 10 criteria, you're I can actually improve on the 2, I don't know. Whereas when men applying for jobs, if they're hitting the 3 out of 10, they're yep, let's go for it. So
and that's proven, isn't it, Ipek? It's proven that men who go for jobs, they might be, 60% right against the job description, but then they're like, hell yeah. Whereas women, I think it's like 35%. If they think they can do 35% of it, they actually won't sort of go for it and they won't apply. The thing I wanted to add, Clemmie, was just be kind. Everyone's on their own journey. We've all had our own different journeys, and I do think experience counts. And just being kinder to yourself. And that phrase of like, we are so good at giving our friends advice, aren't we? So if you were giving yourself advice as a friend, how would you do that?
I would just add a couple of tips and tricks as well to add to that. I think, like you say, you need to extend the same kindness you do to other people to yourself. You need to give yourself a break sometimes because you can't do it all and you have a bad day sometimes, and that's what the human condition is. I think sometimes also break it down. We can spiral and catastrophize and we can send ourselves down a terrible road. And sometimes if you just go, right, I've got 3 things to do. I'm going to spend 1 hour on that, and then I'm going to break. I'm going to go for a walk. And then I'm going to do an hour on that. And then I'm going to have lunch. And just break it down into bite-sized pieces for yourself and understand that no is one of the most powerful things, because if you can't do it all, then be human, because 9 times out of 10, if you can't do it, someone will go, oh yeah, you've got 9 things. Of course you can't. Oh God, what were we thinking? But you've actually taken it upon yourself to think, oh, I must be some kind of failure. But actually, in fact, one of my department this week went, I'm on my own this week and I've got this. And then I was like, oh my, where did that, right? And we break it down and it goes away. I don't look at her and go, oh my God, what a failure. I think you're a human being who needs the space in order to create. And again, you have to bring it to whoever your leader, your line manager or anyone is. I mean, I also, like when I'm doing, I make sure that people have enough space to do their work. Have they got enough hours to do it? And that goes right the way through the whole kind of agency, which is to make sure enough hours are there for you and able to do your own job, because you're not magicians. You're not kind of like somebody that should work more than, the allotted hours a day. So sometimes push the problem back. We're too quick to push it upon ourselves where it's not yours to solve, it's someone else's. And if you call out using the evidence, then I think it's a different conversation. You mustn't turn it on yourself.
Thank you, Sue. I think we are going to have to call it there. So just to wrap up, hopefully you've seen and heard some incredible insights, some inspirational anecdotes, and just some useful takeaways from Sue, Ipek, and Clemmie. Big round of applause for them. Thank you so much.